So, Malians. Play Malians like a pro. Let's watch Sort of do it. So, with that, he opens with one villager on the pit mine, going all the way out to build his first pit mine, and 5 villagers onto wood to get every bit of resource they can from Zevudia. Because Malian houses are just a little bit cheaper. So we see him building the 2 Malian houses. Now, against most civilizations, you are going to be able to build your houses all around, 6 of them. But you have to ask yourself sometimes, am I playing against the guy who is going to make units and come to my base and shut me down? And he's asking himself that question, and he's trying to figure this out too. So with his scout, sort of is trying to see, okay, what is my opponent doing? Is he going to be aggressive? He sees 2 villages on gold already. And usually, this early on, you won't be going on gold that fast if you are going to make spearmen. He runs around, he sees the TC, he sees no barracks, he's trying to find the uwu in this case, but when you're playing against Japan, when you're playing against English, you just want to see where is the barracks. Is there a barracks? And if there is a barracks, you won't be building those extra houses. You will only be building houses where they are safe enough. So now it is basically back to a normal build. He's gotten this whole wood, or this whole straggler tree, and he puts all of his villagers back onto food. This guy finishes building 6 houses, and he just chops a little bit of gold. He's going to go drop it off and go straight onto food. So with Malians, now it's pretty straightforward. We want to make sure that we put everything else on food. This villager ran back to the gold because Sorda forgot to shift click him correctly. And everybody makes mistakes, even the pros. That's why we get to watch them. Now, with villagers here, we see everything on food. He's rallying only onto food. Now, what would be pretty good here is if you take one of these sheep, put it over onto this side so that your villagers don't need to run around one another. But usually, there's a few things happening in the early stages of the game, so you do want to move these guys up, put them as close to the TC as possible. And you now see that sort of has enough resources to start aging up. So he starts aging up. He's not going to be aging up with 8. He's only going to be aging up with 4. The reason he selected 8 is because he just quickly clicked to get all of his villagers there as fast as possible. These villagers here are going to go onto wood. And now, if you're playing Malians, you want to make sure that you go for 4 villagers on food and the rest of them on wood. Now, with him now chopping wood, aging up with 4, he's going to be on a pretty good timing when it comes to getting Feudal. Now, his opponent, he saw that his opponent was in gold. He's not worried about the rush, and he's just getting the wood. So Malians, you usually want to rally all of your villagers onto wood until you have about 10 or 11. So as we can see now, he sends the next villager out here because he knows that these guys are going to chop, and he's going to be able to build a lumber camp pretty soon. So instantly puts down the lumber camp here, and what's very important is he's going for the lumber camp on this side. So the reason he's going for the lumber camp on this side is because he has a safe wood line here, and he doesn't want to chop this wood line already. This wood line is going to be very important if you play against a civilization that has things like horse archers, that has things like Whamenqt, or just likes to stand over wood lines and attack you, like English. So he gets all of his villagers out here working on wood, and you can see quickly building all of this. He builds another house and a mining camp with 1 villager. And because he's a pro player, he doesn't move this villager around. He leaves this guy on gold because he's just going to tell himself, hey, I am going to be using these resources anyway. Now, he's floating a lot of wood, and usually this indicates that you're going for pro scouts or a lot of gold, but he decides to go for other upgrades instead. The reason he does this is because he scouts what his opponent is doing. When you scout what your opponent is doing and you see a stable, you see this many villagers on gold, you know that he's also most likely going to go for pro scouts. So behind this, the reason we left that many on wood is because we want to start adding production buildings. And the rest of the villagers rallied onto food again. So now he gets a stable and he tries to see what his opponent is doing. The scout is all the way here in the base and he tries to see what is going to come out of this stable. And at the same time, he wants to do a little bit of damage. And he asks himself, how am I going to spend my resources? I'm just going to spend it on upgrades. The upgrades that are most important at this stage of the game are your wheelbarrow upgrades and your double broadaxe. Double broadaxe because you have 9 on wood. You want to be boosting 9 villagers. You don't want to get the specialized pick, because specialized pick, basically, you're only improving 1 villager's work. So that's not something you really want. You would rather get your wheelbarrow and you would rather get your horticulture, because horticulture is something that is so valuable to have when you are just getting all the food income. Now, he saw the stable, so he knows exactly what he needs to do from here. He makes a barracks. And this is basically where you have to use your brain as well. You can't just go for something blindly. You have to see what your opponent is doing and you have to make something that actually counters it. But with regards to the villager split, 10 on wood, the rest of them on food. And you can see this one villager that was on gold, he's very happily going to go back over here. Because now, with this split, you're just going to be able to constantly produce units. With that so far, he knows he's not going to do much in his own base, so he tries to go for his opponent's base because he knows that his opponent just sent a lot of units out. And now, he's going to be able to try and find some damage. Behind this, every single time he has the resources, he spends it. How does he spend it? He starts making cattle ranches. So instead of getting horticulture, he says, what's going to be more important is getting passive resources. I'm not going to have these cows forever, but I need to make sure I have them making food as quickly as possible. So every single time he has the wood, he's going to be building something with it. Let's go see what's next. He goes and he decides to do the next pit mine. So always, that's why we leave this many on wood, because we want to make sure we have enough to keep building out the Malian economy. And the rest of them on food, because again, we are always producing. And that's very important in any matchup. Malians, you are always producing. So now the Khan is peeking over the wood line, and you can see now why this wood line starts to get a little scary, because if those are other things like Mangudai, they can start picking off your villagers. But you can always fall back onto your safe wood line here. Now he keeps producing. He never stops. While at the same time, with that wood, he's always making something. So with that extra wood that he has now, he can go make another, what is that, a cattle ranch. So he can make another cattle ranch, but instead he decides to go for a blacksmith. So if he now goes for a cattle ranch, he wants to do it because he wants to get more cows inside. But instead he realizes, hey, I want to keep making all of these units and I'm going to need some upgrades for them too. So you can see it constantly stays at around 11 onto the wood. And with the time going on, because he's just making more and more units and he's getting upgrades now, he has enough on food. You always just want to split your villagers so that they keep giving you enough for your upgrades and to constantly produce units. And that's it. From there on, you make cows when you have the resources. So he doesn't have the resources right now. He realizes, hey, I have a lot on wood. I don't want this many on wood. I'm going to start putting the rest onto gold. And you see, he's only putting villagers on gold around 9 minutes. So up until then, all the gold he's been getting were from the pit mines. And now with all these villagers on gold, still 9 on wood so that he can keep adding these cattle ranches and he can keep adding production buildings. Now he's going to start to make a few more cows so that he gets all those passive resources. And just because he's constantly producing, it becomes a lot harder for his opponent to handle this. And now I feel very inspired to go play Malians. So you keep doing this until you have completely successfully built your cattle boom. When you have the resources for them, you make them. 270 gold, that is not something you want to be floating. That is when you click up and you make cattle. And this is just because he's so focused on being aggressive here at the front. But at the same time, he decides to go for Pro Scouts. Now, Pro Scouts later on is something you'll very rarely do. But on a map like this where there's a lot of deer, you can consider it, especially when you start to get map control. So he goes Pro Scouts, but what he also could have done is he just could have kept making cows. But the reason he's doing this is, as you guys can see, he's running out of food. So this does feel a little bit rough at this point. But you can see he's quickly trying to get every bit of food he can around his base too. But from here on out, you just keep making cattle, or you are able to go out onto the food to try and keep that economy going. Because feudal age Malians, they do slow down a bit when the food runs out. But you can see with all that wood, he's just constantly adding more cattle ranches. So we'll see him adding more and more cows as the time goes on. But now he's quickly getting his pro scouts to bring more food back to the base so that this becomes a lot easier for him. And now you just see cattle ranches being added and more cows being made. Now, honestly, I feel so inspired that I want to play Malians right now.